Chosen ones. Have you ever wondered why your childhood felt like a battleground? Why were you the one always targeted, misunderstood, isolated, and fought against, even when all you wanted was peace? What if I told you it wasn't by accident? Let me tell you a story about a girl named Eden. From a young age, she carried a light so pure that even those closest to her tried to dim it. Her smile threatened demons she didn't know existed. Her silence spoke louder than the noise around her. By the time she was 10, she had already survived abandonment, betrayal, and emotional warfare. People told her she was too sensitive, too serious, or just plain weird. But deep down, Eden wasn't broken. She was chosen. What Eden didn't realize was that every battle she faced since childhood was a direct hit on her divine calling. The enemy knew her future even before she did, but guess what? She survived. And now, God is repaying her double for every tear she cried. Chosen ones, you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out, and every attempt to destroy you was actually God's way of proving your anointing. In this video, we're diving deep into 7 powerful revelations about why you've been under attack since you were a child, and why now, God is stepping in to reward you for your suffering. You're not just surviving anymore, chosen one. You're about to start thriving. Isaiah 61:7 says, "Instead of your shame you shall receive a double portion, and everlasting joy shall be yours." That's not just a verse, that's a prophecy over your life. Stay with me until the very end, because each point we uncover is a piece of the spiritual puzzle that explains your journey and ignites your destiny. It's time you understood why the war against you began so early, and why it ends in your victory. Point 1. You were marked by God before you were born. Chosen ones, let's set the record straight. From the very beginning, before time stamped your name on a birth certificate, before your first cry echoed in a hospital room, your identity was already sealed in the heavens. You were never ordinary, not by design, not by destiny. God had already written your name in the book of purpose, inscribed it with divine ink, and crowned you with an assignment before your feet ever touched this earth. That's why the battle started early. You didn't have to do anything wrong. The enemy saw the mark on your soul and panicked. The moment you entered the world, darkness recognized you as a spiritual threat. That's why you've endured more than your fair share of chaos. The betrayals that cut deep, the family dysfunction, the silent tears at night, the feeling of never quite fitting in. Confusion, rejection, and abandonment weren't just bad luck. They were intentional spiritual attacks designed to derail your identity before you could awaken to it. But the enemy miscalculated. What was meant to crush you only carved out your strength. You weren't built to break. You were designed to rise. See, people often ask, "Why me?" as if hardship is a curse. But chosen ones, we ask, "Why not me?" Because we understand something deeper. Pain is the receipt of purpose. It means something sacred is happening. Every scar has shaped your spirit. Every tear has watered the soil of your destiny. You didn't survive by accident. You were preserved on purpose. And that mark, that radiant spiritual seal that hell tried to dim, it still glows. No matter how many people tried to shame you, silence you, or sabotage your growth, they could never erase it. They didn't give you that mark, so they couldn't take it away. You were set apart. Not because you were perfect, but because you were chosen. And here's the truth that makes the enemy tremble. You're still standing, still praying, still rising, still glowing. The same battles that were meant to break you only exposed your divine DNA. So the next time someone questions your glow, remind them, "I didn't choose this life, it chose me," and heaven backed that decision with fire. Point 2. The attack started early because your light was loud. You didn't have to say much as a kid. Your presence spoke volumes. Long before you understood what energy was, yours entered rooms like a silent trumpet. It wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. You carried something sacred. Innocence, yes, but also a sense of awareness far beyond your years. While other children played carefree, you often found yourself thinking deeply, observing quietly, and sensing when something or someone wasn't right. That sensitivity wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. You were tuned in, and that's what made you different. But being different, especially when you're young, doesn't always feel like a blessing. Some adults didn't know how to handle you. Some teachers labeled you too quiet, too intense, or too much. They couldn't put their finger on it, but your calm eyes made them uncomfortable. Classmates, too, often picked on you, not because you were weak, but because your light reflected something in them they weren't ready to face. And so the bullying began. Subtle at first, then louder. You were ignored, pushed aside, underestimated. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your presence alone made certain people squirm. See, you didn't know it back then, but you were spiritually activated. Your soul came coated with discernment. And darkness? It knows when light walks in. Even if you were just a kid with scuffed shoes and a backpack too heavy for your shoulders, the spiritual realm recognized you, and it reacted. But here's the divine twist. God allowed it. Not to break you, but to build you. To teach you how to stand firm in truth, even when surrounded by lies. To show you how to protect your peace, even when you were too young to define it. He let you learn how to wear invisible armor, while still being soft, kind, and full of wonder. And now, that child who once made others uncomfortable by just being has grown. The light has intensified. It shines with intention now, with wisdom, with power. You're not here to dim down or fit in. You're here to walk boldly, because your energy still enters before you do. Only now you understand why. Point 3. Isolation was God's way of elevation. Ever wondered why you were always the odd one out, even among your own flesh and blood? Maybe you were the child who asked the questions no one wanted to answer, the one who felt things too deeply, saw too much, or spoke too little. Your silence was often mistaken for weakness, your sensitivity seen as fragility. But that wasn't weakness, that was wisdom in disguise. You were never too much. You were just too rare to be understood in common spaces. This wasn't a mistake. It was divine design. God was hiding you in plain sight. While others blended in, you stood out. Not because you tried to, but because your soul came stamped with heaven's fingerprint. In psychology, this sense of isolation often links to gifted individuals, those whose emotional intelligence or intuition surpasses the norm. But spiritually, it's much deeper. It wasn't just about being different. It was about being set apart, sanctified, protected. While others were learning how to be liked, you were being taught how to be led. God had to protect your mind before the world had the chance to pollute it with comparison, vanity, or fear. You may have watched others around you celebrated for conforming while you were questioned for your conviction. But isolation wasn't rejection. It was redirection. It was God building in you a strength that doesn't depend on applause. You were never meant to fit in because you were destined to stand out, not in ego but in purpose. You were being trained to carry something heavy, spiritual authority, emotional discernment, and divine insight. Royal blood doesn't just mix in any crowd, it must be guarded. You had to learn solitude so you wouldn't compromise when the crowd finally came. You had to learn to love the quiet so you could later walk confidently in your calling without needing validation. Being the odd one was never a punishment. It was preparation. You weren't delayed. You were being developed. And one day, when you're standing firm in your purpose, when your clarity silences confusion and your light exposes deception, you'll understand. The isolation wasn't loneliness, it was God's sacred classroom. He hid you not to hurt you, but to prepare you to lead. Point 4. Your tears were collected, not wasted. Every tear you've cried, every silent sob in the midnight hour wasn't wasted, chosen one. You weren't alone in those moments. In fact, the divine was closer than ever. Psalm 56:8 beautifully reminds us of this truth. You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. Can you imagine that? The creator of the universe bottling up every tear you've shed as if each one were a priceless gem. That's how precious your pain is to God. It wasn't overlooked, it wasn't ignored. It was recorded in heaven's ledger as evidence, not of your weakness, but of your faith, your endurance, your sacred process. See, when you thought you were falling apart, heaven saw you being molded like gold in a furnace. Scientists tell us that extreme pressure creates diamonds and fire purifies gold. That's not just a metaphor, it's a spiritual principle. Your weeping nights weren't breaking you, they were refining you. Every tear you cried was a hidden prayer. Every heartbreak you endured was an offering laid at the feet of the Most High. You didn't need to speak. Your pain spoke volumes, and trust. God heard every word. What the enemy meant to use to crush you, God is now using to crown you. That's why the tables are turning. That's why the same people who overlooked you are now seeing you rise with divine authority. God never ignores pain. In fact, biblically, pain is often the prelude to power. Look at Joseph, betrayed, imprisoned, forgotten. But when the time was right, God raised him to a throne and repaid him with purpose, influence, and restoration. The same God who did it for him is doing it for you. Double for your pain. Oh, yes. That's not just poetic justice, it's divine compensation. Isaiah 61:7 promises, instead of your shame, you will receive a double portion. So while the enemy is trembling at your comeback, you're stepping into a reign that was always yours. Your tears weren't wasted, they were investments. And now, chosen one, the return is coming. You won't just recover, you will reign. And every tear that once hit the pillow will be replaced by a crown. Point 5. People betrayed you because they sensed your purpose. Some of the folks who turned on you didn't actually hate you. They hated what your presence stirred within them. You see, not every betrayal is rooted in malice. Sometimes it's rooted in fear, insecurity, and unhealed wounds. When you walk into a room carrying peace, purpose, and anointing, those who are unsettled inside feel exposed. Your confidence makes their self-doubt louder. Your light irritates the shadows they've been trying to ignore. And instead of confronting their inner demons, they project them onto you. That's why people who once smiled with you could turn around and stab you in the back. But don't take it personal. It wasn't really you they were fighting, it was what you represented. Psychologists call this displaced aggression. When people direct their frustration or unresolved emotions at someone who simply represents a threat, often unintentionally. So when you triggered something within them, they responded with betrayal, slander, or distance. But guess what? That wasn't a loss. It was divine clarity. When someone shows you who they are under pressure, believe them. And instead of mourning their departure, thank God for the exposure. Even Jesus had a Judas. And that betrayal? It wasn't a detour. It was part of the divine design. Without Judas, there's no cross. Without the cross, there's no resurrection. So if you're crying over who left, maybe you're crying over the wrong thing. Rejection can be brutal, but it's often redirection in disguise. That's God rerouting you, pruning your circle, and protecting your destiny. And those people who tried to bury you with lies, silence, or sabotage, they didn't know you were a seed. A seed looks dead when it's buried, alone, in the dark. But beneath the surface, it's preparing to break open. It's gathering strength in silence, pushing down roots so it can rise up stronger than before. That's what happened to you. You didn't just survive the darkness, you grew in it. So don't waste time being bitter about who turned on you. Their betrayal built your resilience. Their rejection revealed your worth. And your rise will be the response they never saw coming. Keep blooming. Let your growth be the loudest clapback. Point 6. Your delays were divine setups. You saw others sprinting ahead, collecting accolades, promotions, and blessings like it was a free-for-all. Meanwhile, your life felt like a frustrating game of red light, green light. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. You watched people who cut corners rise while you, with all your good intentions and integrity, were stuck waiting. And in that waiting, let's be honest, you started to question God. You whispered prayers into the void and wondered if he even heard you. You stared into the mirror and began to doubt your own worth, asking, "What's wrong with me?" But here's the truth, chosen one. Delay is not denial. That stall, that seeming standstill, wasn't punishment. It was preparation. See, while you were busy comparing your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 10, God was backstage setting the scene for your grand entrance. Every no was a divine redirection, every closed door a protection plan, and every pause in your life's rhythm a sacred alignment with heaven's calendar. Had you received what you were praying for when you were praying for it, it could have destroyed you. That relationship you were desperate to hold on to might have derailed your purpose. That opportunity you cried over missing could have locked you into a place too small for your calling. So God said, "Not yet." Not because you weren't worthy, but because you were too valuable to be thrown into something half-baked. He needed to stretch you, to strengthen your spirit, to fortify your character, to teach you endurance, humility, and divine patience, qualities that don't develop in fast forward. And now? Oh, now you're about to witness the why behind the waiting. That door you've been pacing in front of, praying over, crying for, it's not just going to creak open. It's going to swing wide with a divine force that no man can shut. Because this time, you're not just walking through with desperation. You're walking through with power, with wisdom, with discernment. You've been refined, not denied. So lift your head, chosen one. The delay wasn't the end of your story. It was just the holy pause before your breakthrough. And now, heaven's clock says, go. Point 7. God is releasing double for your trouble. You made it through the storm. Let that sink in for a moment. Not everyone survives the emotional hurricanes, the silent seasons, or the nights soaked in tears. But you did. You didn't just survive. You grew. You stayed kind when it would have been easier to lash out. You chose compassion over pettiness, grace over gossip, and faith over fear. And while you may have felt overlooked or even forgotten, heaven was watching. Every act of quiet obedience, every time you bit your tongue instead of biting back, none of it went unnoticed. Now get ready. You're stepping into the fulfillment of a divine promise. Joel 2:25 says, "I will restore to you the years the locust has eaten." That's not poetic flair. That's God's vow to his faithful ones. In ancient Israel, locusts were a symbol of utter devastation, economically, physically, spiritually. Crops destroyed meant livelihoods lost, futures wrecked. But God didn't just promise to stop the locusts. He promised to restore what they stole. That means payback, and not just enough to break even. When God repays, he goes beyond. He multiplies. This next season in your life won't be ordinary. It's going to be laced with divine favor so bold and undeniable that even your enemies will have to take notice. You see, this isn't about revenge. God isn't in the business of petty clapbacks. He's in the business of restoration. That means healing, promotion, joy, elevation, double for your trouble, as Isaiah 61:7 affirms. Every lie they told about you, covered. Every scar you carry, healed. Every sleepless night you spent praying, worrying, fighting silent battles, redeemed. And the best part? The blessings won't just be for your comfort, they'll be a testimony. The very people who mocked you, underestimated you, and questioned your faith will witness your rise. Not to glorify you, but to glorify the God who stood beside you in the fire. So don't worry about proving them wrong. You won't have to say a word. The favor on your life will speak louder than anything you could ever post, shout, or explain, because when God repays, he repays double, and he makes sure the world sees it. Chosen one, if you hear anything today, let it be this. You were never a victim. You were a vessel. They tried to destroy you because they saw something on you, something they couldn't define. Something divine, but God saw it too, and he said, "Not my child, not today, not ever." Now you're stepping into a season of double blessing, divine recompense, and undeniable favor. Your pain has matured you, your wounds have become weapons, and your story, it will inspire nations. So rise up, dust off the shame, reclaim your crown, because God never forgot you, and he's repaying you in a currency this world can't even measure. Chosen one, it's time.